The Trump administration spending the weekend laying out exactly who Kilmar Abrego Garcia is and why he was deported to El Salvador. The White House posting President Trump with a picture of Garcia's alleged MS-13 tattoos with the caption, quote, "If it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it is probably a duck." Then there's this report released from Homeland Security. Garcia pulled over for speeding by Tennessee's Highway Patrol in 2022 with 8 people in the car traveling from Texas to Maryland with no luggage. The report says Garcia was, quote, "suspected of labor or human trafficking," end quote. Let's bring in Tricia McLaughlin. She's the Assistant Director for Public Affairs at Homeland Security. Thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Morning Futures. Let's go back to this traffic stop. I recognize you were not involved at Homeland Security at the time, but this report is troubling. And one of the questions that comes out of this report evidently is, was the FBI involved? Did they signal to the Tennessee Highway Patrol not to do anything with this traffic stop?
Jason, happy Sunday and happy Easter. Yes, we were able to redact and also give out for public consumption this Homeland Security investigation report. And basically what we found was that in 2020, after his prior 2019 arrest, he was transporting 8 individuals from Texas to Maryland. That's about a 3-day journey. And yet there was absolutely no luggage in that vehicle. That reeks of human or labor trafficking. He was also, during that course of the investigation, pretending to not know English. So investigators have very good reason to believe he is involved in human trafficking. But further, he's a member of MS-13. In his 2019 arrest, he was found not only with other members of MS-13, but as well, he was decked out in MS-13 gear. He was found with drugs and rolls of money. As much as the media and Democrats want to pretend that this is an innocent man, he is by no means that. And, he should be off of U.S. soil, and he should certainly be in a detention center, whether it be in El Salvador or in the United States of America. He should not be on American streets raining terror.
So to be fair, when he was pulled over there in Tennessee, it's my understanding he was not ticketed. The question was, did he have a driver's license? At least something I read said that he did not. There's this, this suspected of human trafficking. But if he's not even arrested, but that's why my question is, did the FBI get involved? Was there pressure put from the federal government on the Tennessee Highway Patrol to not charge this person? Because I think from his standpoint, he's probably looking at it saying, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. If they did, they would have charged me.
Jason, there certainly seems to be more to the story. I'd like for the FBI to speak on their own behalf, but from an HSI and Homeland Security perspective, there are major question marks why this individual wasn't actually taken into custody after the events occurred, especially 8 individuals, again, in a vehicle on a 3-day-long journey with no luggage. That reeks of human trafficking, that reeks of labor trafficking, and even that law enforcement officer involved, the Tennessee Highway Patrolman, noted that in his notes.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear from that person. And was there pressure put on by the federal government under the Biden administration to do that? I want to move now to what Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Kristi Noem are dealing with the Insurrection Act. This is we're right up against the deadline where they have to make a recommendation to President Trump. This would allow more resources and tools, particularly from the Department of Defense, to be put at the border. Will they do that? Will they not do that? It looks as if they don't need to do that because the border does seem to be fairly secure at this point, given the resources that are down there now.
Oh, absolutely, Jason. And you're right, that 90-day report is up and it will be released to the public at some point, but I'm not going to get ahead of that yet. But as you said, border crossings are down 95%. That is a historic low in America. It's really remarkable in less than 100 days what Secretary Noem and under President Trump's leadership has been able to do at that border. We just visited a couple of weeks ago with Secretary Noem, and it was completely deserted in areas that had seen massive amount of crossings. And there's another highlight to this story is that unaccompanied children at the border, which drug mules and coyotes, the cartels would use to traffic drugs and traffic children, unaccompanied children is at an all-time low in crossings. And that's also great for our Border Patrol agents because they're not spending time processing these individuals at our processing centers. They're actually out in the field, able to use their resources to arrest these cartel members, arrest these drug mules, arrest these really bad actors who are trying to come across our border. So thanks to Secretary Noem and President Trump, America is safer, and that's something we can be very proud of on this Easter Sunday.
Yeah, look, it took the political will of a Donald Trump, a President Trump, to say, no, we're going to lock down that border. And boy, somebody trying to cross the border now, that's a special kind of idiot who decides, hey, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try to cross the border now with President Trump in place. But, you know, hey, you can't stop stupid, I guess. But that does happen. That's very good news about, you know, young people, unaccompanied minors, because there's something very disgusting about doing that along the way. On deportations, I need to ask you, are deportations happening fast enough? There's some criticism out there that deportations, actually expelling people out of the country, has it been happening at pace, or does it no more need to happen in order to get more people out of the country?
Our ICE and Undersecretary Noem is doing everything possible. As you know, Jason, we're facing an unbelievable number of injunctions from activist judges. We're not letting that hamstring us. We're not letting just the Alien Enemies Act be the only tool in our toolbox. We also have Title VIII. So we have deportation flights going almost every single day. I think that's something Americans demanded on November 5th, 2024, and we will continue to do everything in our power to get these criminal aliens, of which there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, let into this country under President Biden. We are doing everything in our power to get them out, but Secretary Noem isn't satisfied yet, and we will continue to use every tool in our arsenal to get these people out.
Tricia McLaughlin from Homeland Security, happy Easter. Thanks so much for joining us on Sunday Morning Futures. Do appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.